For 12,000 years, the Galactic Conquered had not fought a single real battle. They did not need to. The Anticipation Protocol made violence unnecessary. The protocol was simple. Before any conflict, the Mirathi predictors would run simulations, millions of them. They calculated every possible move, every strategy, every outcome. Within hours, both sides knew who would win. The loser would surrender, ships never fired, soldiers never died, war became math, and math always had an answer. High Predictor Voss had served the protocol for 800 years. His species, the Mirathi, had evolved specifically for pattern recognition. Their minds processed data like rivers flowing to the sea. Voss had predicted the outcomes of 2,341 potential conflicts. He had never been wrong, not once. So when Conquered scouts discovered a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star, Voss felt no concern. The inhabitants called themselves humans. They had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Their fleet consisted of 89 ships. The Conquered had 400 in this sector alone. Counselor Prill, a tall Talveshi diplomat with iridescent wings, delivered the standard ultimatum to Earth. The Conquered required the solar system for mining operations. Humanity would relocate to a designated colony world. Resistance was not recommended. The humans asked for 3 days to consider. Voss used that time to run the protocol. His predictors analyzed human history, military tactics, ship capabilities, and psychology. They ran 47 million simulations of potential conflict. Every single simulation ended with human defeat. Most ended within 6 standard cycles. Some ended in 3. The longest prediction gave humans 11 cycles before total surrender. Voss reported his findings to the Council of 12. The war, if humans were foolish enough to fight, would be brief and one-sided. On the 3rd day, the human response arrived. It came from Admiral Reva Okonkwo, commander of Earth's defense fleet. She was 52 years old. Before the military draft, she had taught improvisational theater at a university in Lagos. Her response was one word: no. Counselor Prill found this confusing. She contacted Okonkwo directly through a secure channel. Admiral, you understand the protocol has calculated your defeat. This is not opinion. This is mathematical certainty. Okonkwo smiled on the view screen. I read your report, very thorough. Then, you know resistance is pointless. I know you think you know what we will do, Okonkwo said. That is not the same thing. Prill's wings fluttered with frustration. The Mirathi have never been wrong. There is a first time for everything. The channel closed. The Conquered fleet moved into position around Earth. 400 ships formed a perfect sphere, each one placed according to optimal tactical calculations. They waited for the human fleet to arrange itself in one of the 12,000 defensive formations the protocol had predicted. The human fleet did something else entirely. 89 ships scattered in random directions. Some flew up, some flew down. 3 ships began spinning in circles. 1 ship flew directly away from the battle, then stopped, then flew backward. Voss watched his prediction models collapse. None of the 47 million simulations had included this formation, because it was not a formation, it was chaos. He ran fresh calculations. The new prediction still showed human defeat at 99.97% probability, but the margin of error troubled him. There should be no margin of error. Admiral Okonkwo gathered her senior officers for a briefing. Lieutenant Danny Reyes, her communications officer, had spent 10 years as a street magician before joining the Navy. Captain Yuki Tanaka commanded the destroyer Moonlight and painted abstract art in her spare time. The aliens predict everything, Okonkwo told them. They have run millions of simulations. They know every tactic ever invented. So what do we do? Tanaka asked. We invent new ones. Reyes raised his hand. How? The same way jazz musicians play, Okonkwo said. We improvise, we make it up as we go. Every captain chooses their own path. No coordination, no pattern, just chaos. That sounds insane, Tanaka said. Exactly, they cannot predict insane. The conquered flagship detected movement. The human ships were rearranging again. Fleet tactician Morrell, a six-armed Kalshi observer, studied the new pattern and felt his stomach turn. What formation is this? He asked Voss. Voss stared at his screens. His eyes processed data that made no sense. It appears to be a smiley face. A what? A human emotional symbol. They have arranged their fleet to form a smiling face. Morrell looked at the tactical display. The human ships had indeed formed two eyes, a curved line for a mouth, and a small cluster as a nose. Is this mockery? I do not. No, Voss admitted. The words felt strange. He had not said them in 8 centuries. Counselor Prill contacted Okonkwo again. Admiral, what is the meaning of your formation? Okonkwo shrugged. It looked funny. The channel closed. Voss ran another prediction, then another, then 1,000 more. Each one failed. The human movements matched nothing in his database. They followed no logic, no strategy, no pattern. For the first time in 847 years, High Predictor Voss did not know what would happen next. In her command chair, Admiral Okonkwo leaned back and smiled. The real battle had not yet begun, but she had already won the first victory. The aliens were confused, and confused enemies made mistakes. Nobody in the Galactic Concord had ever received a surrender demand in the form of knock-knock jokes. Lieutenant Danny Reyes had spent 3 hours writing them. He sat at his communications console, broadcasting to all 400 Concord ships on every open frequency. Knock, knock, he said. Silence. You are supposed to say who is there, Reyes continued. Fine, I will do both parts. Knock, knock. Who is there? Surrender. Surrender who? Surrender now or we will keep telling jokes. On the Concord flagship, fleet tactician Morrell listened with growing horror. Is this a code? A hidden message? High Predictor Voss ran the jokes through 17 translation algorithms. I detect no hidden meaning. They appear to be simple humor constructs. But why? Unknown. 3 weeks had passed since the standoff began. The conquered armada still surrounded Earth. The human fleet still refused to form any sensible pattern. And now this. Counselor Prill demanded answers from Admiral Okonkwo. What is the purpose of these transmissions? Entertainment, Okonkwo replied. My crew was getting bored. Your fleet is outnumbered 4-1. You face certain defeat, and your crew is bored. War is 90% waiting. We might as well have fun. The channel closed. Prill turned to Voss. Can you predict their next move? Voss hesitated. He had run fresh calculations every hour for 21 days. Human defeat probability remained at 99.97%, but the humans refused to behave like a defeated enemy. They acted like they were winning. They will likely continue random movements, Voss said. Beyond that, I cannot say. Cannot or will not? Cannot. The word hung in the air like poison. Meanwhile, Captain Yuki Tanaka had painted her destroyer bright pink. Not military pink, not tactical pink. The kind of pink found on birthday cakes and flamingos. She had used every can of paint on the ship. Tanaka, what are you doing? Okonkwo asked over the comm. Making my ship pretty. Why? Because they will not expect it. Okonkwo considered this for 3 seconds. Carry on. The Concord detected the pink ship immediately. Morrell studied it with deep suspicion. Why would they mark one vessel so distinctly? It must be a trap, a decoy, perhaps a bomb. The paint appears to be standard ship coating, Voss reported. No explosive compounds. Then why pink? Voss had no answer. Tanaka flew her pink destroyer directly toward the Concord flagship. She moved at full speed, no evasive maneuvers, no weapons charged. Just a bright pink ship flying straight ahead while playing loud music through external speakers. The flagship retreated. 3 escort vessels moved to intercept, but Tanaka did not slow down. She did not change course. She just kept flying forward. "She will ram us," Morrill said. "Evasive action." The flagship turned hard. The escort vessels scattered. Tanaka flew through the gap they created, did a loop around the flagship's communication array, and flew back to the human fleet. She had not fired a single shot, but she had made the entire conquered formation break apart in panic. "What was that?" Prill demanded. "I wanted to see if they would move," Tanaka replied on an open channel. "They did." Morrill felt something he had never experienced in 300 years of service. He felt embarrassed. Okonkwo called a meeting with her captains. The joke transmissions kept them busy analyzing nothing. Tanaka's run showed they will retreat from anything they cannot predict. "We can use this." "How?" Reyes asked. "We make them predict everything, flood them with data, give them so many patterns to analyze that they cannot focus on any of them." "What kind of patterns?" Okonkwo smiled. "All of them. Every captain will do something different. Random formations, strange broadcasts, unexplained movements. We will give them 1,000 puzzles with no solutions." The next day, human ships began performing unexplained actions. One ship flew in squares. Another broadcast cooking recipes. A third rearranged its hull plating to spell rude words in 17 languages. Voss tried to predict each action. He failed. He tried to find patterns in the chaos. There were none. He tried to calculate optimal responses. His models crashed. The conquered fleet grew nervous. Ships began bumping into each other as they tried to track unpredictable human movements. One destroyer collided with a cruiser while chasing a human vessel that had suddenly reversed direction for no reason. 3 conquered ships were now damaged, not from weapons, from confusion. Prill met with Okonkwo one more time. "I must understand. What is your strategy?" "We do not have one." "That is impossible. Every military has a strategy." "We have a philosophy instead," Okonkwo said. "Would you like to read it?" "Yes." Okonkwo sent a single document to the conquered flagship. Prill opened it eagerly, expecting tactical brilliance. It was the rules to Calvin Ball, a fictional game from an old human comic strip. The only rule was that the rules changed constantly and could never be the same twice. Prill read it 7 times. She understood the words. She did not understand the meaning. "This is madness," she said. On her ship, Admiral Okonkwo laughed. "Yes, that is the point." The conquered warship Eternal Vigilance flew into a sun because it was chasing Christmas lights. Scholar Dean, a Falori historian who resembled a large owl covered in moss, read the incident report 3 times. He still could not believe it. The humans had attached strings of colored lights to a small drone. They had programmed the drone to fly toward the nearest star while flashing in random patterns. The Eternal Vigilance, convinced the lights were some kind of weapon signal, had pursued the drone for 11 hours. The ship's crew realized their mistake too late. The sun's gravity pulled them in. All 800 crew members escaped in pods, but the ship was lost. 2 months into the conflict, the conquered had lost 31 vessels. Not one had been destroyed by human weapons. They had destroyed themselves. Collisions accounted for 12 ships. Crews had panicked while tracking unpredictable human movements and crashed into each other. Equipment failures took 9 more. Engineers had worked themselves to exhaustion trying to decode meaningless human signals and made critical errors. The remaining 10 ships had been lost to what Dean could only describe as embarrassment. One captain had surrendered after human Marines boarded his vessel carrying water guns. The Marines had not fired a shot. They had simply pointed the colorful plastic toys at the crew and shouted "bang" repeatedly. The captain had not known what the weapons did. He had imagined the worst. He had surrendered a warship to children's toys. Dean presented his findings to the Council of 12. The 12 leaders of the Galactic Conquered sat in their chamber on Station Prime, their faces showing varying degrees of confusion and fear. I have studied human warfare extensively, Dean began. They have fought over 15,000 wars among themselves in recorded history. So they are violent, said Council Leader Tan. We expected this from a Deathworld species. Yes, but that is not the interesting part. Dean activated his display. Every war used different tactics. Many tactics directly contradicted tactics from previous wars. Human generals regularly made decisions that their own advisors called insane. Why would they do this? Dean scrolled through his research. I found a quote from a human military leader named Patton. He said that a good plan executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. Humans value speed and surprise over careful calculation. The council murmured among themselves. This was heresy. The anticipation protocol existed because careful calculation always won. There is more, Dean continued. During a human conflict called World War II, one side created inflatable tanks, fake vehicles made of rubber and air. They placed them in fields to confuse enemy observers. Did the deception work? Extremely well. The enemy spent resources attacking empty fields. Council Leader Tan rubbed his temples. They tricked their enemies with balloons. Yes, and this is considered brilliant strategy. Among humans, yes. The council fell silent. They were beginning to understand their problem. Meanwhile, Sergeant Rosa Mbeki led a Marine squad onto Concord Supply Station 7. Her mission was to capture the station's food stores. She had 12 soldiers, no heavy weapons, and a bag full of party supplies. The station had 200 Concord personnel and a security force of 50 armed guards. Mbeki walked through the front door. She was not sneaking. She was not hiding. She walked in like she owned the place, her squad following behind. "Excuse me," she said to the first guard she met. "We are here to take your food." The guard raised his weapon. "You are under arrest." Mbeki pulled out a small device and pressed a button. It made a loud honking noise like a circus horn. The guard hesitated. "What is that?" "A weapon." "It does not look like a weapon." "It is a human weapon, very dangerous." Mbeki honked it again. "Do you want to find out what it does?" The guard looked at his security chief. The security chief looked at his manual. There was nothing in the manual about honking weapons. The protocol had no data on circus horns. "What does it do?" the guard asked. "I cannot tell you," Mbeki said. "Military secret, but I can show you if you do not surrender." The guard imagined possibilities. A sonic weapon, a brain scrambler, a device that made enemies explode. Human weapons were unpredictable. Human soldiers were insane. This woman had walked into a fortified station with 12 people and a honking device. She had to know something he did not. "We surrender," the guard said. Mbeki smiled. Smart choice. Her squad collected the food stores and left. The entire operation took 40 minutes. No shots were fired. No one was hurt. High Predictor Voss received the report and felt his mind crack slightly. He had spent 800 years building perfect models of conflict. He had predicted the outcomes of thousands of wars. His success rate was 100%. Against humans, his success rate was 0. He tried a new approach. If humans always did the unexpected, he would predict the unexpected. He would assume they would choose the worst possible option and plan accordingly. It did not work. Sometimes humans did choose the worst option. Sometimes they chose the best option. Sometimes they flipped coins. Sometimes they asked their pets for advice. There was no pattern to their randomness because they did not know what they would do until they did it. Voss sat alone in his chamber and stared at blank screens. For the first time in centuries, he understood nothing. And somewhere in the void of space, Admiral Okonkwo was laughing. Operation Jazz Hands had no plan. That was the entire plan. Admiral Okonkwo gathered her 89 captains for the final briefing. They connected through secure channels, their faces filling her screen in a mosaic of determined expressions. From this moment forward, there is no fleet, she told them. There is no coordination, there is no unified strategy. Each of you will command your ship as you see fit. Do whatever you think is right. Do whatever you think is wrong. Do whatever you think is funny. Just do not be predictable. Captain Tanaka raised her hand. What if two of us accidentally do the same thing? Then change it. Keep changing until you are different. What is the goal? Survival, beyond that, creativity. Lieutenant Reyes looked concerned. This sounds like chaos. It is chaos. Chaos is our weapon. They have spent 12,000 years building a system that defeats order. We will give them disorder. We will give them madness. We will give them 89 separate problems that cannot be solved together. The briefing ended. The human fleet scattered like seeds in wind. The conquered armada watched in horror. Their tactical displays showed 89 ships moving in 89 different directions. Some flew fast, some flew slow, some stopped completely. One ship began flying in a spiral pattern that resembled a corkscrew. Fleet tactician Morrill tried to assign pursuit vessels. But every time he sent a ship after one human vessel, two others would change course unexpectedly. His formation kept breaking apart. Focus on their command ship, Counselor Prill ordered. Which one is the command ship? Prill realized she did not know. The humans had no formation, no flagship position. Admiral Okonkwo could be anywhere. High Predictor Voss attempted one more calculation. His predictors had worked continuously for 4 months. Their minds were exhausted. Their models were broken, but Voss pushed them anyway. Predict the movement of the pink vessel, he ordered. The predictors focused on Captain Tanaka's ship. They analyzed her past movements. They calculated probabilities. They generated a prediction. Tanaka went the opposite direction. Voss tried again, and again, and again. Each prediction failed. Tanaka seemed to know what they expected and deliberately chose something else. She is reading our predictions, Voss said. She must be. That is impossible, Morrill replied. She cannot access our systems. Then how does she always do the unexpected? The answer was simple, but Voss could not accept it. Tanaka was not reading predictions. She was just making random choices. She did not know what she would do until she did it. That made her impossible to predict. Counselor Prill requested another meeting with Okonkwo. The Admiral agreed, appearing on screen with a cup of tea in her hand. Your fleet has no strategy, Prill said. This cannot work forever. It does not need to work forever. It just needs to work longer than your patience. We have waited 12,000 years for perfection. We can wait longer. Can your crews? Okonkwo gestured toward the view screen. Your ships are tired, your people are confused. They joined a military that promised them certainty. Instead, they got us. Prill had no response. She knew Okonkwo was right. Conquered crews were trained to follow the protocol. They were trained to know the outcome before the battle began. Fighting an enemy with no pattern was destroying their minds. What do you want? Prill asked finally. I want you to leave our solar system. That is not possible. We need your resources. Then find resources somewhere else. The galaxy is large. The protocol says we will win. Okonkwo laughed. The protocol has been wrong 2,000 times in 4 months. At what point do you stop trusting it? Prill ended the transmission. She walked to Voss's chamber and found him sitting in darkness, staring at nothing. Can you predict them? She asked. Voss turned slowly. His eyes were empty. I have tried everything. I have analyzed their history. I have studied their psychology. I have run billions of simulations. Nothing works. Why? Because they do not predict themselves. His voice cracked. They embrace uncertainty. They make decisions based on feelings, hunches, random chance. They ask questions like what would be funny instead of what would be optimal. That is madness. Yes, and madness cannot be calculated. Voss stood and walked to his prediction console. He entered a command. The screens went dark. I am shutting down the protocol. Prill stepped back in shock. You cannot do that. The protocol is useless against humans. Every prediction fails, every model breaks. Continuing to use it will only drive my predictors insane. He paused. Some of them are already speaking in rhymes. They cannot stop. What do we do without the protocol? Voss looked at her with eyes that had seen 800 years of certainty crumble in 4 months. I do not know, he said. For the first time in my life, I truly do not know. Somewhere in the chaos of space, Admiral Okonkwo finished her tea and smiled. The enemy was breaking, not their ships, not their weapons. Their minds, and minds were harder to repair than metal. Half the conquered fleet fled in the middle of the night. No orders, no coordination. They simply turned their ships around and left. Council leader Tan received the news during breakfast. 200 vessels had abandoned their positions. Their crews had decided that facing an unpredictable enemy was worse than facing punishment for desertion. Bring them back, Tan ordered. We cannot, his aide replied. They are scattering in different directions. Pursuit would take months. Then arrest the captains when they return to port. They say they will not return to port. They would rather become pirates than fight humans again. Tan set down his food. His appetite was gone. The Council of 12 gathered for an emergency session. Scholar Dean stood before them with his final report. 6 months of research had led him to one conclusion. Humans cannot be predicted because they do not predict themselves, Dean began. Their history is filled with leaders who made choices based on dreams, coin flips, or asking their pets. One human general won a critical battle because he ordered retreat, then changed his mind halfway through and attacked instead. Why would anyone do that? Asked Council Member Seti. Because he felt like it. That is the human answer to most questions. They felt like it. The Council murmured in confusion. Their entire civilization was built on logic and calculation, feeling like it was not a valid reason for anything. It gets stranger, Dean continued. Human military academies teach something called creative thinking. They train officers to ignore established doctrine and invent new approaches. They reward soldiers who disobey orders if the disobedience leads to success. That is chaos. Yes, they call it initiative. Dean displayed records from human history, wars won by deception, battles turned by lucky accidents, victories achieved through plans that every expert called stupid. The Trojan horse, Dean said. Humans hid soldiers inside a wooden statue and gave it to their enemies as a gift. Their enemies brought the statue inside their city. The soldiers climbed out at night and opened the gates. Why would anyone accept a gift from an enemy? Because it was unexpected. The defenders could not believe anyone would try something so obvious, so they assumed it must be safe. Council leader Tan leaned forward. You are saying humans win by being stupid. I am saying humans win by being unpredictably stupid and unpredictably brilliant and unpredictably everything else. We cannot know which version we will face until we face it, and by then it is too late. The chamber fell silent. Councillor Prill stood and addressed the council. I have spent 6 months negotiating with their admiral. She is intelligent. She is reasonable. She is also completely comfortable with uncertainty. When I ask her plans, she says she will figure it out when she gets there. That is not a plan, Tan said. Exactly, and that is why we cannot defeat it. The council debated for 3 hours. They considered sending more ships. They considered new weapons. They considered assassination attempts against human leaders. Every option led to the same problem. They could not predict how humans would respond, and without prediction they could not calculate victory. Finally, Council Member Seti proposed the unthinkable. Perhaps we should negotiate peace. Peace means surrender, Tan said. Surrender means admitting defeat. Peace means admitting we cannot win. There is a difference. The distinction was thin, but it existed. The conquered had never surrendered, but they had negotiated peace with equals before. They could do so again if they convinced themselves humans were equals rather than enemies. Counselor Prill was authorized to begin talks. She contacted Admiral Okonkwo with a simple message: "We are willing to discuss terms." Okonkwo's response arrived within the hour. It was not what Prill expected. "We propose a dance competition to decide the outcome of the war. Best of 3 rounds. We will provide music." Prill stared at the message. "Is this serious?" She showed it to the council. They debated for 2 days. Was it a metaphor, a code, a test of some kind? On the 3rd day, Prill asked Okonkwo directly, "Are you serious about the dance competition?" "No," Okonkwo replied. "We were curious how long you would discuss it." 3 days. "That is very funny. We had a betting pool. I won." Prill felt something break inside her. Not anger, not frustration, something closer to exhaustion. "What do you actually want?" she asked. "We want you to leave. We want our solar system. We want you to never threaten us again. In exchange, we will not pursue your retreating fleet. We will not attack your territory. We will simply exist alone, making up our own rules." "That is all." "That is everything." Okonkwo paused. "We do not want conquest. We do not want revenge. We just want to be left alone to be weird in peace." Prill looked at the woman. On her screen, this human had defeated 400 ships with jokes and chaos and painted destroyers. She had broken the anticipation protocol. She had made predictors speak in limericks, and now she was offering mercy. "I will present your terms to the council," Prill said. "Take your time," Okonkwo replied. "We will be here, probably doing something you cannot predict." The transmission ended. Prill began writing her report. For the first time, she thought the humans might actually win. The treaty was signed on a space station that smelled like fresh paint and confusion. Harmony Station 7 had been chosen as neutral ground. The Concord had built it specifically for negotiations. Everything was designed for order and clarity. Straight lines, clean surfaces, perfect symmetry. The human delegation had added balloons. Counselor Prill walked through the corridor and tried to ignore the floating decorations. Red ones, blue ones, yellow ones shaped like animals. Admiral Okonkwo had insisted on them. "They make people happy," Okonkwo explained when Prill asked why. "We are signing a peace treaty. This is serious." "Serious things are better with balloons." Prill had stopped arguing months ago. The Council of 12 sat on one side of the treaty chamber. The human delegation sat on the other. High Predictor Voss stood in the corner, watching everything with tired eyes. He had recovered from his breakdown, but remained changed. He smiled now. He had never smiled before. Council Leader Tan read the treaty terms aloud. The Conquered would withdraw all claims to the Sol system. Humanity would retain complete independence. Trade agreements would be negotiated separately. Neither side would attack the other. It was, by every measure, a human victory. Tan finished reading and looked at Okonkwo. "Before we sign, I must ask one question. Was any of this planned?" Okonkwo considered the question. "About 30%. "Which 30%? "I genuinely do not remember anymore." Voss stepped forward. He had waited 6 months to ask his own question. "How do you live like this? How do you function without knowing what comes next?" Okonkwo turned to face him. "We do not function despite uncertainty. We function because of it. Not knowing what comes next means everything is possible. Every day is new. Every choice matters. We are never bored." "That sounds terrifying." "It sounds like living." Voss thought about this. For a long time, in 800 years, he had never truly lived. He had predicted. He had calculated. He had known outcomes before they happened. But knowing the future meant the present did not matter. Every moment was just a step toward an inevitable end. Humans did not know their endings, so they made every moment count. "I think I understand," Voss said quietly. The treaty was signed. Hands were shaken. The war was officially over. Humanity had won without firing a single shot. Scholar Dean approached Okonkwo after the ceremony. I have written a treatise about your species. It is called On the Impossibility of Human Prediction. The Council has made it required reading across 4,000 worlds. What does it say? That you cannot be understood through logic alone, that you operate on a different kind of intelligence, one that embraces chaos instead of fighting it. Okonkwo smiled. Do you believe that? I believe it is the closest explanation I can offer. Whether it is true, Dean spread his wings in a gesture of uncertainty. Perhaps truth is less important than usefulness. That is a very human thing to say. I know it concerns me. The conquered fleet withdrew from Earth space. The anticipation protocol was modified to include something called the human variable. It added random chaos to all calculations, acknowledging that some things could not be predicted. Other species began studying human culture. They watched human movies. They read human books. They listened to human music. They were trying to understand how chaos could be a tool instead of a threat. Most of them failed, but some learned, some began to improvise. Admiral Okonkwo retired from the military. She returned to teaching improvisational theater. Her first lecture at the academy included a simple message. The universe is jazz, she told her students. There are no wrong notes, only unexpected ones. The key is to keep playing no matter what happens, make something beautiful out of the chaos, or make something ugly. The point is to make something. 3 years after the war, High Predictor Voss visited Earth. He wanted to see the planet that had broken his perfect record. He wanted to understand the people who had defeated certainty itself. He found himself in a park, watching children play. A little girl with braided hair noticed him. She was maybe 7 years old. She walked up to him without fear. "You are an alien," she said. "Yes. Want to play with us?" Voss looked at the children. They were running, jumping, laughing. No rules he could see, no structure he could recognize. "What game are you playing?" he asked. "We make it up as we go." Voss thought about 800 years of calculations, 800 years of knowing exactly what would happen next, 800 years of existence without surprise. Then he sat down on the grass. "Show me how," he said. The little girl smiled and took his hand. She led him toward the other children, toward a game with no rules, toward a future he could not predict. For the first time in his very long life, Voss did not know what would happen next. And he was happy.